Hi, I'm Rob, and welcome to the Uncut Network. Every month we rotate between actors, directors, and super specific genres, and we cover everything from exploitation to things your parents will absolutely approve of, relative unknowns to household names, and everything in between. The Uncut Network is the movie podcast with all of the niches and cover all of those things and more. I'm joined by Larry. Hello there.
Hello.
Is this the first time you've been on this iteration of the podcast?
I think so. I think I've only been on the show where you talked about what we watched. So I think that's been. I've not graced this podcast before, so
long overdue. It is long overdue.
I agree.
And also, I'm joined by, I guess he's my podcasting wife now. It's Ben. Hello, Ben.
I thought that was other Rob or Prob.
I have multiple wives. Come on, it's modern time, you know.
You're a podcast bigamist. Damn you. No, I was going to say people are probably sick of the sound of my voice already, but that's all right. So's my wife. So join the queue.
I don't know how to come back from that, really.
Just telling the truth. It's my truth.
How are you both? You both well? Both good?
Yes. Yeah, doing good.
Yeah, grand. I'm not going to lie, a little tired. Went out last night, and I'm nearly 50, and I don't go out very often. So I am a little tired. But it's okay.
You know what they need in life? Music, a little bit at the back where they have like a few seats just so you can enjoy it and, you know, sit and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I was sitting down. I think it was just the anxiety of being around people. It was just kind of like, I don't like this. People go away. I usually like being at home watching movies on my own because nobody wants to watch these with me.
We are in a genres month, and as we picked previously, this is an episode about heroic bloodshed. Now, if you don't know what that means, it just sounds like I'm saying two random words together and it has no real meaning. So, what is heroic bloodshed?
Is that a question, or...?
Yes, it's a question.
No.
Or should I do a
it's
raise?
a question.
I've been
Okay.
told off recently because my sarcasm doesn't sound like sarcasm, so the questions have got to sound like questions as well. What is heroic bloodshed?
I am the worst people reader in the world, so people will be there asking me questions like, that was, right, okay. So I like to make sure. Unless Larry wants to go on this one, I'm quite happy to...
Nah, I'm happy to bow to the man who knows his Hong Kong.
You know what? This is a bit like when my wife hears me talking about Taiwanese wuxia pian movies. It's like you could be telling me anything. I don't know. Well, anyway, according to the Hong Kong's Heroic Bloodshed Pocket Guide by Martin Fitzgerald, which they did do one of those pocket guides for, it was actually a turn of phrase coined by Rick Baker. Now, Rick Baker's kind of infamous for writing a lot of books about Hong Kong cinema from like the early 70s when it first launched with King Boxer and things like that. And it was a way of kind of differentiating between the traditional Kung Fu cinema, which had come out of Hong Kong, to this new kind of action cinema that was really kind of this gangster cop versus robber gunplay kind of action cinema that was really prominent in the 80s. In Hong Kong. Now, it has gone by other names. As I say, I grew up kind of knowing it as Gun Fu. It's, as I say, it's kind of the Chinese triad movies, you know, kind of similar to the Japanese Yakuza movies. But I think Heroic Bloodshed's kind of the one that's really caught on in recent years. But as I say, that only kind of came about because Rick Baker saw A Better Tomorrow, which I think was 1986 off the top of my head. So this is quite a new genre, even though you could say, well, actually, these kind of action films have been around for decades, and they have been. Sorry, I was just thinking, and actually, no, the 80s were decades ago now. I've got to stop thinking it was like last decade. I'm just old.
It's like the noughties were decades ago as well. That's the scary one.
Don't.
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
Right, it's been lovely talking to you all. I'm going to go home and go home. I'm already going. I'm going to go upstairs and have a cry. No, but and it's, as I say, so it was a way of kind of differentiating between the traditional kung fu movies like your Jackie Chan's, your Bruce Lee's, that kind of thing that were coming out of Hong Kong, and this new wave, kind of the forerunners of whom were people like John Woo, Chow Yun-fat, Choi Hark to a degree, and you know that kind of gunplay kind of films from there.
So, Larry, what's your experience with heroic bloodshed? You clearly you enjoy him, otherwise you won't be on this episode. So
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's something that I had limited knowledge of before, and obviously doing my podcast now and sort of trying to champion both sides of the the spectrum in terms of Asian films and obviously Hollywood movies. It's something I'm trying to sort of fill the gaps of. But I mean, I know the big ones. I know Hard Boiled, The Killer, Better Tomorrow 1 and 2. Just I recently watched The Last Blood. God of Gamblers. Those kind of like just they're kind of I'm getting a little bit. I'm filling up the pockets of knowledge that I do have and find out new ones. So I feel anytime that I see Chow Yun Fat in a movie, I'm like from the 80s and 90s, I'm like right, okay, I'm sort of in. I know I'm sort of in going to be in sort of heroic bloodshed sort of waters. So I'm again it's limited knowledge, but I'm getting there slowly. But the things that I do know have knowledge of, I really love. We'll talk about later on in the podcast. I just love Hard Boiled. It was hard. I was fortunate when I was watching it for the podcast itself. It was hard to that big age old argument of like what's better, The Killer or Hard Boiled. I can't. Every time I watch one or the other, I just go, "Oh, this is the best one. This is not the best one." Yeah, it's hard. I have a fight with myself every time I watch these movies.
They can both share first place. They're both the best.
Yeah,
I think is the easiest way.
It's not a competition.
That's a fair thing to do.
They're great movies that you put people.
Twitter says it's a competition, okay?
This is the best one. Shut up.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. It's one of those sort of styles, isn't it? Like it's tied to a era and a place. It's kind of the very similar sort of to, I don't know if you know the Eurocrime movies. I can't say Polizia.
Yeah.
They're very similar to them. So if they make good double bills of each other, but we have 3 movies: The Long Arm of the Law, the first one, Full Contact. Oh yeah, and Hard Boiled.
阿 Sir， 如果你對我仲有感情嘅話，我想帶你翻嚟俾你享下福。
翻廣州啊？
喂！
就算而家你要我翻去廣州，都未必適應嘅。
如果你唔走，我哋冇謂再討論，根本冇時間。
幾多客陪我幾個月長，我梳都未梳過佢咧，你黐線嘅。
你又話開房睇電視嘅，
咁咪睇咯，睇緊電視咯，你自己老土除成衫睇啫。
喂，屙尿都要俾錢㗎，唔知俾幾多先啱啦？
屙尿話5蚊，屙屎10蚊。
我大佬去咗澳門。
我唔敢啦！你燒啦！你燒死我啦！基本上我哋思想一致，走啦走啦！你東哥話走就走啦，不如你一槍打死佢，索性攞埋佢嗰份。
Ben, what is the long arm of the law?
Right, from a story point of view, we're talking about a bunch of guys who are coming in from mainland China looking to make their money in Hong Kong. Because Hong Kong at the time, especially with it still being a British colony, was kind of seen as the promised land. It was a way of getting rich. It was kind of a lot of English money was still there being put through there. It was seen. So if you could get into Hong Kong from the mainland, get money, and then get back out again, you could live quite happily for the rest of your lives in mainland China. However, as kind of alluded to here and kind of talking about in other films as well, when people got there, they didn't really want to leave. And this is Five Guys, that they're kind of there. They want to do this bank job. They've been kind of brought in from somebody already within Hong Kong to actually pull off these heists, and it all goes from there.
Larry, what are your feelings on Long Arm of the Law?
Yes, it was one I wasn't aware of till like last year, I think. I sort of Googled the best heroic blood. I went on a big Bloodshed sort of binge, and I looked at kind of your Watch Mojo-esque style of clickbait articles of what's the best heroic Bloodshed moves, and this is kind of so pretty near the top. So yeah, I really like this. I really love the film. Bought the box set of the two.
You notice, listeners, he didn't ask me. You see, he goes to all these Watch Mojo lists. Doesn't go, Ben, I know we've recorded before. You seem to know a bit about this. Why don't you, could you give me some pointers, please? I went, happily.
Now, I mean, now we're sort of friends, and now I've had you on my show. I would bow to your knowledge in the future.
When did we record that show? When did we record that show? That was over a year. Was it a year ago?
Yeah, about a year ago.
Sorry,
I felt like you let me spread my wings, and I've tried my best. And then if I know that I'm going to do wrong, I'll come back and speak to Uncle Ben.
No worries, mate. No worries.
Yeah, it's a good one. I mean, it's one of those 88 films put out a Blu-ray of it, and known about it for years. It's one of those that poster is kind of iconic on its own, never mind the film.
Yeah.
But this was the first time for me, and no buttons in saying it, this is an absolute masterpiece of 80s Hong Kong action, I think.
Yeah, no, it is. And it is a fantastic... It's kind of the one that you really point to within Heroic Bloodshed, of the one that really set the template going forward. You can see a lot of like what Ringo Lam would pull up in things like City on Fire and that kind of thing. And in fact, Full Contact later on, which again is a Ringo Lam film we'll talk about, there's a lot of similarities and a lot of kind of beats, but from different sides of the coin. Between the two, but this is the one. I mean, yes, you could argue that there were Heroic Bloodshed films before this within Hong Kong cinema. Something like The Coolie Killer, The Headhunter. There was films like this one.
The first slasher as well, isn't it? It's like
it really is.
There's no first slasher. Just it started. That's it. It's fine.
Yeah, it took its influence from other films and it developed it, and that's what kind of Long Arm of the Law did. And as well, it was hugely successful as well. So, and Hong Kong is very good at copying itself. So, if a film comes out of something that's kind of original or something that's kind of on the back of something, you will see 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them, usually produced by Wong Jing, and they will just kind of come out, and there will be a whole slew of very, very similar films. Some will be comedic, some will go for more of a romantic kind of feeling, but this is very gritty. It shows you kind of a side of Hong Kong that you don't really, well, up until that point, you didn't really see. Yeah, and it was just excellent. It set this template of this gritty, and it kind of put it in an everyday life that people could relate to, of that daily struggle, of that kind of, I need money. And it is because working an honest living wasn't enough. So here's a get rich quick kind of idea. And that's it, and hence the jewelry heist. But the beats in this as well, it's kind of, again, John Woo really picked up on this, kind of the actual action beats on this. It is, you get a big set piece, like 20 minutes in. There's the car chasing within, I think it's about 20 minutes in. The car where they try and do the first heist, and they get rumbled by the cops, and kind of reversing down the streets of Hong Kong, and you're kind of guessing that Johnny Mac didn't get the right permits for that one, and it was kind of like, there were just people just kind of standing around, and the reckless abandon which Hong Kong film is, and it just hits those beats perfectly. Performances wise, you could question some of it, and some of the comedy beats aren't quite there.
Apparently they're also, well, at the time anyway, none of the faces were particularly familiar, but they were all non-professional actors. And even now, I don't really know who any of the people are. That sort of, what is it? I can't remember what they call it. It's like the Big Something Gang. Like about 4 or 5 of them, and yeah, none of them particularly leaped off the screen to me.
No, And this is, and as well, if you look at the director as well, this is the only film he ever directed. Johnny Mac is kind of better known as a producer. He's got Johnny Mac Film Productions. He's not a director, but the fact that he stepped up for this one and did such a brilliant job, I'm actually amazed he didn't direct anything else.
I mean, when you think of Juno Mac is the name, I think is more. Remember that correctly?
Johnny Mac. Well, it's Mac Tong Hung is his Chinese name. I've always known him as Johnny Mac. Sorry, see, this is where I get cancelled, you see, because I've spent a lifetime going Andy Lau, Jackie Chan, Sammo Hung. It's kind of ingrained, so I apologise now. That's how I know them. What do you want me to do? I mean, what you had as well is in the backing of this is one of the co-producers of this was Boho Films, which is Sammo Hung's production company.
Yeah, popping up so much on this podcast recently. He gets everywhere, does Sammo.
He is for as much as people. Yes, Jackie Chan put Hong Kong cinema on the map. I mean, outside the 42nd Street cinemas and things like that, Jackie Chan put it on the map. But the heartbeat is Sammo Hung.
Yeah,
he's got his fingers on every kind of level. Even now, I mean, the film, the Kowloon Wall City film that's going around at the moment.
Yeah,
he's in it. He's there again. Doing it, and he's 66? You know what? I don't know. I'm not good at remembering dates, names, and things like that. But he's in his 60s, and he should not be doing things like that. If he was my doctor, he would probably tell him to stop.
Yeah. The thing I think really needs speaking about this. I mean, heroic bloodshed movies. The name Bloodshed implies that they're violent, and they are violent, but they're not long arm of the law violent. This is
before this film, honestly, if I could go back in time, people talk about going and buying shares in Google and things like that. I'd go back and invest in a company who makes squibs, because there is squibs in this. In all these films, but
it's not particularly violent, but there's like one scene where it's like, oh, it's that sort of movie, is it? Where they're charged with killing someone. They don't know who it is at the time, but there's this person who's going to give them some money and say, if you do this, we'll give you a little bit more. You do a favour for us, we'll do a favour for you. And he goes to the shopping centre, and it's just very, very camp and tacky. And there's this guy, I think he's called Master 8 or something, the character, something like that. And they just get shot in the face. He flies over the side of this, like the third story up, and crashes down on an ice rink and goes bouncing all over the place, and just blood everywhere. It's like, wow. Oh, hello, movie. Hello,
sorry,
movie.
They call him, that's the police officer, the inspector. They call him Fatty throughout the film, kind of thing. And and this is another thing about Long Arm of the Law. There's some falls in this one, and people are landing. I mean, that fall where that actor lands on the ice. I mean, granted, they do it in stages. They break it down. They do it in slow motion, just like the best John Woo, and I'll talk more about that later. Because this ain't Zack Snyder slow-mo. This is proper, appreciate the action of what's going on here kind of thing. And he was so close to fulfilling a pentagram on the ice as well, if you notice, when they kind of zoom out and you see, because there's blood left all over the ice, and he's sliding around. And he does kind of verge on the ridiculous, because there's no way.
It is, but still.
The body would have hit, and it would have stayed down. It would have been a nice splat, kind of that blood on white background. But yeah, that fall, and you feel that crunch as he hits the ice, and it's just sort of like, wow, this is hard. And it's gonna beat up my senses for the next hour that's left of this movie, because I think that's one thing that has to be established as well right now, is that the first hour 45 minutes is just character. Yeah. You are just. I mean, there is the occasional action beat, like as I said, the one in the Hong Kong streets when they're checking out the jewelry shops and things like that, or casing them out. That happened, but then you spend time with this gang. These are the villains of the piece, but they're not shown that way. They're just people looking for a way out of their financial situation. And it's great.
Anything that put down there, Larry, that you want to pick up? We kind of move very quickly. But... No,
I completely agree with what you guys are saying. It feels like it's hard to describe it as a kind of it's quite similar to kind of films like kind of Friedkin a little bit, in terms of like sort of quite kinetic, you know. And you're talking about obviously there's kind of a lack of permits on when they do these films, and I think I was like researching about this film. It was like actually somebody gets out when they're running to the car, kind of getaway car from doing the first heist. Somebody actually does run into one of the guys, like fucking hell, like just he sort of jolted because somebody just goes, they don't realise it's being filmed. They just see some guy running, they're sort of shooting, and they're like there's these kind of fake cops following them. But so everybody around the general public are completely unaware, so they're gonna run into them thinking this guy's gonna get away. Maybe we can try and stop them, but it's just a very like there is a lot of kind of character work, and there's a lot of time spent on the characters and learning about them, and there's a lot of obviously there's other kind of boss, this other kind of gang boss that they're sort of employed by. There's a bit of a kind of back and forth and a little bit of treachery with them, and you kind of I think later on he kind of tries to kind of kill them all at some point as well. So there's also kind of like these sort of, but then it pays into these kind of big action scenes like the car chase, obviously the very very famous bit at the end, the big Kowloon Walled City, and there's
I just got to ask, was that actually shot in Kowloon Walled City?
No, because that just, I was going to say Kowloon Walled City kind of disappeared years ago. I kind of got torn down and it's been renovated.
Sorry, it's just something I had to bring up there. But do continue, Larry.
No, I was just saying. So like, and then there's a big bit with the sort of they've got the kind of hostage guy. There's a big bit with the helicopter, and they're just getting, and it just becomes a sort of like very bombastic sort of film as well. So it's not as much as it feels very 70s and very sort of like low key. These kind of like actually like French Connection, or the sort of the desperation of completely blanking the name. The one with the truck, I've completely blanked the name of the freaking film with the truck.
Oh, Sorcerer.
Yeah, Sorcerer. Yeah. So it seems like they're just trying to get into this desperate situation where they think they're going to go out and all kind of completely fucks up around them. So there's definitely what you're saying before about there's definitely beats that kind of that get amplified over the course of kind of other heroic budget films that we kind of see, we know and love now. But this kind of sets a tone for those kind of films and sets a sort of standard, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting on a character level, I think, because it feels like there's other directors that we haven't mentioned. Johnny To is a guy who sort of dabbled in this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
He's dabbled, let's just say, because he's
he has, but he kind of very much came in to this kind of era. I mean, you could argue that sort of like the Heroic Trio and films like that kind of dabble in this kind of stuff, but that was more of a fantasy action. He really came into his own kind of like the early to mid 2000s.
PTU and Election and movies like this is what I was thinking.
That kind of thing were really and they were kind of like the post kind of handover films, which were kind of not necessarily dialed back, but they didn't have the ferociousness. Still great films, don't get me wrong, but they didn't have that level of...
His movies are very, very different. His movies are more sort of... he has kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of improvisational style, feely sort of character moments.
I'm saying they're not ferocious, and then I'm remembering Simon Yam at the end of Election, and I'm like, oh, actually, no, I got that one wrong.
And these, I mean, not talking on the violence of those movies so much, but the character beats, and it does feel like that. It feels like a lot of the Johnny To style, where these people are they're not really. It doesn't really feel scripted. Yeah. It just feels like they just are, and they're just getting on. They've all got their own little quirks. Like the one with the mustache is an absolute horrific human being.
Yeah.
There's is it one they call Fatty? I think who is just
chubby. I think
he's just basically. He seems like the brains of the group. There's lots of fat shaming in Hong Kong movies. Just get that out of the way. And the leader, who is an absolute, he's a charming man, but when he turns it on, he's an absolute ferocious monster. But it's just the dynamics of these characters. It's really interesting. And I'll be honest, it was boring until it sort of it woke up. It sort of set the stall, and then it woke up and it's like, oh, wow, okay. But it needs to be that sort of slow climb, I think, for the payoff to really work.
For the payoff to actually
at the time
feel like.
At the time, I have to be honest. I was bored for like the first half an hour, to be completely open about it. I mean, it's fine. It's each to their own.
Yeah, but I learned not to take your opinion too literally when I found out you didn't like Everything Everywhere All at Once. So that's all right. Never letting that one go. Never let.
Well, we may have the right opinion.
How dare
but,
you?
know.
If you don't agree with me, you are wrong.
Well, you say that, but that is the sort of consensus of Everything Everywhere All at Once fans. They kind of go a bit nutty.
Oh, yeah.
On the Letterboxd scale, anyway. On the Letterboxd. But yeah, I mean, this is a wonderful movie, really. It builds and builds and builds, and it doesn't really have that sort of sense where it feels like everything's going to be okay. It just feels like everything's going to set. The world's going to blaze, really. I mean, there's a scene where they think somebody's betrayed them and they tie him to the back seat of their car and set the car on fire. This is a scorched earth sort of movie, really, isn't it?
Exactly. And that just kind of, because you're not entirely sure where that's going at that point. And there is kind of a payoff to that, and an immediate payoff to that scene. It's just because you don't really know. And kind of, not necessarily the first time, but it's kind of like you're starting to understand how far these people are willing to go.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, hang on a minute. These are kind of being portrayed as heroes, but they're not heroes. In fact, they're quite sadistic in many ways. And
yes,
yeah, it's just, it has got a level, but it's kind of, again, it's trying to understand how desperate people are. And these people are desperate.
Yeah, because they start laughing and joking and having McDonald's and praising their fallen colleague, but then it just slowly, and they get to that bit where obviously they're setting the car on fire. They've kind of tied him up in this car, and then they're really going to set him on fire. You think, right, okay, the happy joking McDonald's lovers are not here anymore.
And 10 minutes later, we're back to those kind of lovable rogues kind of thing. And it's kind of like, it is very, but again, it's kind of that understanding that people aren't just bad. People aren't just nasty. There's a reason for that, and it has to come from somewhere. And they can enjoy those slow moments. I mean, it's like you were saying, there's a payoff with a couple of scenes involving a prostitute where one of the characters is trying to get his way, and then she won't have it because, demanding all these, you must take me shopping, you must give me this amount of money, you must do this. Or you can sit there and watch television because that's all you're getting. And it's kind of like a payoff to that. And yet what he does is disgusting. It's absolutely abhorrent behavior. And yet he has been portrayed as one of the heroes of this story.
Yeah.
And it's also kind of treated like he has won, like he's finally got justice to his situation. You're kind of looking at it going, no, we are talking Hong Kong cinema here. And it's not exactly the most, I don't know, right face without sounding like a proper gammon. You know, and it's one of those kind of situations. It's of its time, but it's also, when you look at it, it's not good. There you go.
Agreed.
No. There's no way to sort of beat around the bush there. It's one of those things, isn't it? I mean, you can watch movies from the 50s, the 60s, the 40s, the 20s, and you think, oh, that doesn't work anymore. That's old-fashioned thinking, but you can't really look at films like that. You've got to look at them where they're from and what generation they're from, because these things don't really... You can't watch every movie with 2024
They're a snapshot
eyes,
of the time.
really.
And especially when you're dealing with other countries, which some of them are still very, very, very behind what we would consider modern behaviours. But that's judging people by our own standards, and that's, again, not fair because we're not part of the same culture. So, it's a complicated one. But yes, some people, warning, some people might find some scenes in Long Arm of the Law problematic.
Yes.
So not excusing it, even for the time it was abhorrent behaviour. But it's kind of, in this kind of way, in the framing of this film, it was played a lot more comedic and a lot more rewarding to him. Yeah. No, absolutely. Because the way he's jumping around and like, yay, I finally get what I want.
Well, he was, yeah, but I don't think it presents it as comedic. I think it's sort of that twisting of the screw where it's one of those moments, it's full of these moments in the movie where you're thinking nice guys, but they're constantly, to quote them, they're constantly telling on themselves. They're constantly saying, this is who we really are. And it's like, it starts off with, the nice guys, but the whole point of the movie is, it's a political movie, which it's one of those things you watch it. It's not just a good action movie, but you watch the making ofs and the Blu-ray, and it's very political about, as Ben said, the mainland China's. What's that? That's not a word.
The wrestler. Hang on.
Yeah, who went to Hong Kong for glory and just didn't particularly behave well. So it's about that. But yeah, so he's kind of anti-Chinese people coming to Hong Kong in the stance on this movie. So it tries to humanize them, but also it falls into the sort of
it kind of tries to portray them as animals as well. It just kind of, they've got this animalistic side to them, and which you know, it's a bit like city folks and people who grew up on farms in the country. Oh,
politically
have you got
complicated.
electricity where you are from?
Yeah. And whether it's Kowloon Wall City where it is or not, the end is in a surrogate for that area, and that whole sort of final shootout in these very tight corridors. I mean, if you don't know what Kowloon Walled City is, we've referenced it a few times now. Once upon a time, it was one of the most densely populated places on Earth. This little area in Hong Kong, which had millions, I don't know millions, but thousands upon thousands of people.
It was crime-ridden. It was absolutely the seediest place, all sorts of things going on. But yeah.
And the final shootout takes place there, and it's incredible.
Yeah.
Pretty violent, but incredible.
Are we going to discuss the end, or are we going to kind of leave that for people to discover? Because this is not indicative of Hong Kong cinema.
I feel like Bloodshed's a little less good guys win, bad guys lose. It's more of a nihilistic style of cinema, I'd say.
Yeah.
And it is, but it doesn't end usually this nihilistic. Okay, I'm not going to go into detail because I think that would kind of take away from the end of this film. But there's also a sense in a lot of Chinese, Hong Kong, East Asian cinema, but primarily Chinese and Hong Kong cinema, of justice being served, whether that be good guys, bad guys, whatever. Like even if one of the heroic guys, if they murder somebody halfway through the film, rightly or wrongly, they have to be punished because they did something wrong.
It is interesting thinking of it on that level, because when you think of movies in 1984, the police were absolutely the good guys. Can't speak for Hong Kong cinema because I don't really know sort of Hong Kong cinema sort of Hong Kong that wasn't Shaw Brothers pre 1980. But yeah, the police were the good guys, and in this, to look at it with 2024 eyes, it has sort of a very militaristic American view of the police, where the police are just there to basically stop things happening and shoot everybody.
They're not bad guys per se because we're following the bad guys. They're just not the focus of the story. They are seen as this kind of, they are the police and that's it. It's kind of like this. You could put any face into those roles and it wouldn't matter because they're very militaristic. They're very, it's kind of seen as a singular force. I mean, later on that kind of changes a lot, but they are seen as a singular force. And it wasn't really until Jackie Chan with Police Story kind of changed it. There was also a big thing in Hong Kong cinema. You couldn't make the police force look silly. You could, that was kind of like a big no-no.
Oh, they absolutely don't in this. No, they are ferocious as anybody, really.
But they're also procedural as well. I mean, could you argue there's a bit of overkill in this? Yeah, I think that's fair to say. But they're still following procedure. They are on the right side of the law, just with that heightened violence. Remember, these guys killed one of their own, you know, so...
Larry, anything that we haven't talked about? Anything you want to revisit in Lang Am La before we move on to the next movie?
No, I don't think so. I think as Ben was saying, we've not really spoiled it for anyone, so I think go and check it out. It's just a classic, not just a classic representation of heroic bloodshed, but just a classic Hong Kong movie that I think everybody needs to see. And it definitely was, the minute I seen it, I was like, right, I've definitely missed out on something, so it feels like kind of a special film. When it comes into that sort of oeuvre of movies, I think it's something people need to watch. And if you're a fan of 70s kind of crime movies and like the sort of Italian police procedural movies, and I would definitely check it out because you'll think you really enjoy it.
I mean, this would make a cracking double bill with French Connection that you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah, sure, yeah.
And there's probably like a Polizia Tecci movie from Italy that'd make it an absolutely amazing triple bill of just grim police procedurals from the 70s stroke 80s.
Absolutely, yeah.
Ben, any final thoughts?
I'm sure people are sick of the sound of my voice, and I'm sorry if I'm taking over. Tell me to shut up. But no, it's one of those films that really set the template going forward. So if you have seen things like The Killer and Better Tomorrow, those kind of things, and you've really enjoyed that gun tote and you think Chow Yun-fat's cool, this is worth kind of checking out. If you've really dug those, it's worth checking out to kind of see where it started. Yeah, it hasn't got the gloss that those films have, but it's definitely got the squib work. So it's well worth. And what a golden age we're kind of living in right now, where all these companies like 88 Films and Eureka are releasing so many of these films. Honestly, if you'd asked me 10 years ago that we were going to get a Blu-ray box set of Long On With the Law 1 and 2, I would have been like, yeah, right, whatever.
There's 3 of them, isn't there?
4. Well, technically, officially, there's 3, but this is like the Mr. Vampire series that we did a little while ago. There is a 4th. It's kind of commonly known as Long Arm of the Law 4. I'm just trying to remember the name of it now. Hang on, let me... Underground Express. It came out in 1990. So, yeah, so these were kind of filmed very, very close. I mean, 1984 was Long Arm of the Law, Long Arm of the Law 2, 1987. So that was right in the height of heroic bloodshed, really starting to take off. Long Arm of the Law 3 was 1989. Then Underground Express, which is kind of commonly known as Long Arm of the Law 4, certainly internationally, was 1990. So it really kind of fits in there. So, yeah, there's technically 3 officially, unofficially, like with all Hong Kong movies. This is the 4. Because what was the one you were talking about earlier? It's kind of known as Hard Boiled 2, but it's not.
Last Blood.
Yeah, Last Blood. So I think that was made before Hard Boiled as well, I think.
Hong Kong doesn't care about things like this.
I think Hard Boiled 2, though, was its international title. So it probably got released well after kind of thing. So I don't think Hard Boiled kind of made it over to the West until like...
I think it was with like the DVD boom that it came over here.
Yeah.
How are the sequels? Worth checking out?
I've not seen them. Actually, for all kind of knowing them things like that, I've never seen any of the sequels. I saw the first one a while back now. I managed to get like this VHS kind of rip of one, which kind of just suddenly fell into my lap, and I don't know how. For the record, I did buy the 88 Films Blu-ray, so you don't come after me, please. So it was kind of more trying to get my hands on the other ones. Now I've got the sequel, it's just having the time to do it. Kids.
But it's a good motivation to do it, really, because check it out. Buy that box set from 88 Films. It is a very good box set.
Yes, very nice.
And the fact that
especially if you're a collector and you like these kind of things, well worth picking up, because as I say, it is it sets that template. And if you like that in other films, you're going to enjoy it here. It's raw, but it's good raw, not that kind of I should stop raw.
Yeah, you were going to say there, Larry?
No, I was just saying I bought the box set myself from 88 Films. It's really nice. I'm not had a chance to sit down and watch the sequel, Long Arm of the Lamb 2 yet, but I was gonna watch it for in time to talk about it in this, but I didn't get the time to. But yeah, like I think that's more. The second one's more focused on the police, isn't it? They sort of swap sort of sides. I think
that'd be an interesting twist. Yeah,
I think it's about like I think it's more about like a cop when a kind of cop, the force of the Hong Kong police force goes in and sort of infiltrates like in a gang. So I think it's almost like a sort of a flip, I guess, a little bit. But yeah, I'm looking forward to watching. And then the third one I'll obviously try and track down. Is that even on? Is that in Blu-ray as well, or can you get that? Is that one of these kind of
somewhere?
Not
maybe.
as yet. Not
some weird Swedish lab imprint, something like that.
Probably out in Hong Kong by Fortune Star, and it'll probably be an upscale DVD copy that they're presenting as Blu-ray. Oh, look, it's high definition. It's 720p.
Yeah, that French label whose name I never remember the name of. They're likely.
Spectrum. Spectrum Film. They do a lot of good stuff.
Haunted by memories of betrayal and driven by revenge, a fallen warrior will battle a nemesis seduced by the promise of absolute power. In a conflict without limits, the fire of retribution will consume all who stand in its way. Chow Yun-fat. Simon Yam. And Anthony Wong. In one of the most daring films from 2 decades of action cinema.
So moving on to the second film, which is about as different as it could possibly get while still being under the same banner. Second movie of the evening is the weirdest. We'll stay with weird. It's 1992's Full Contact from Ringo Lam. This is complicated. Well, it's not complicated. It's really goofy and it's really 1990s. Chow Yun-fat is sporting Guile hair from Street Fighter. He's got a cut-off jean jacket. He's got a Harley Davidson, I think it is, motorbike. He's got a little gang. He goes to rescue his friend at the beginning from Loan Shark, who he's got on the wrong side of, and that is played by... He could be anybody in any movie, frankly. Anthony Wong. He could be the most suave person in the world. He could be the most skeevy person in the world, or anything in between, really. But he gets his cousin involved because he needs to give this loan shark his money back, and his cousin has a gang of his own. His cousin has this gang with Simon Yam, who's essentially. He's a gay gentleman. It's not the worst depiction of gay people in Hong Kong cinema. Oh no, that barrel goes way, way down. But in this version of Simon Yam can fire bullets out of his fingers. He's got a finger gun because that's a perfectly reasonable thing to happen in one of these movies. We have Anne Bridgewater, who plays... I've got the wrong character there. Bonnie Fu, who plays a character called Virgin, who's begging for sex constantly, with her boyfriend Dino, who likes shooting everybody with machine guns rather a lot. Essentially, one party betrays the other, and it leaves Chow Yun-fat on his own with a cute dog to climb back from zero and get revenge on this crime family that basically stole his gig, really, and stole his friend, Anthony Wong. I think that about sums it up, really.
Yeah.
Just add all of the cocaine in the universe when it was being made, and you're on about the level of Full Contact.
And as you said, this is kind of like the polar opposite of Hard Boiled. Well, not necessarily the polar opposite. It's kind of so ridiculous. And I'll tell you what, the VIP of this movie is Simon Yam. Simon Yam is chewing the scenery in this one. He is hungry, and those sofas are not going to eat themselves. He is all over this. And he is fun. Yes, he is gay, but it's kind of... It's not really... Usually when you have gay characters, I know we talked about this in the Mr. Vampire series, which we did for the Patreon. Sign up for it, everybody. And it's where it can be quite negative, where it kind of like the stereotypes are here from... It's really... He's a really powerful character. Everybody's kind of at his hands. He's kind of that...
He's the kingpin, really.
This is the film that made me fall in love with Simon Yam. Yes, he'd done loads of things from here, but this is the film that was like, I love him. I would have his children. Maybe. I would watch him eat toast. And he's just absolutely fun. And he is bonkers. As you say, if this wasn't fueled by narcotics in some way, allegedly, if this wasn't not fueled by narcotics, then I don't know what was, because it is absolutely bonkers.
Because there's a French movie which is very similar to this, in the sort of, they clearly have to have, allegedly, let's just get that straight, some cocaine imbibement called Doberman.
Oh yes.
Very Full Contact. But Laurie, what are your feelings on this one?
Oh, I loved it. It's so good. It's so good. Simon Yam is like the most fabulous human being in this movie. I just was so captivated. The minute he came on screen, he's lighting cigarettes with his thumb, like Lauren Hardy. He's like producing knives out of like his hands. He's pulling handkerchiefs. It's like for some reason he has a big magician arc thing for the whole film, but it doesn't really get explained. He just seems to be like has gay superpowers. It just seems to be like omnipresent forever.
He's flamboyant. He's a showman,
Yeah.
and he likes to put on a show. He likes to be in control, and he likes to put on a show.
That's really good.
As you say, and that kind of taps into the, as you say, shooting people out of his finger kind of thing. Yeah.
And also, just to stress on that point, he does shoot people out of his finger, and it also has bullet point of view shots in this.
Yes,
like, numerous ones.
POV is
that's
brilliant.
amazing. Yeah, that's like one of the like. It looks wacky, but it's also like something like shit, but it also looks amazing at the same time. It just looks like so like ridiculous, but at the same time you're like, and this movie just completely suits it. Like, of course you will see the bullet's point of view and like them kind of passing by and like hitting against each other and like it's just very sad. But like I love Simon Yam. I was recently talking about Simon Yam in a film called Blood Fight, which is like a very early late 80s blood sport knockoff. You know, and it's very dramatic and he plays sort of a Rocky character in it. But yeah, in this movie he just like going right balls to the wall, kind of Casa Troy style like theatrics. He's like shooting the gun, just laughing maniacally, like wearing like a ruffy, like a puffy shirt and a corset. Just like and a one point a Wilder Heart sort of Nicolas Cage snake skin jacket. I just think he's amazing. And again, Chow Yun-fat is like effortlessly cool in this movie, even though he's got a name Keith, which is like an interesting name to have in Hong Kong. Sam and Keith, the most like just like northern sounding like Keith, just really northern sounding names. But I just think it's really cool. It's like it's one of these films I kind of come across that people are kind of talking about sort of held as like one of the best road bloodshed movies. So when I again loving anything Chow Yun-fat's in, I went this kind of big binge this City Fire and Wild Search as well. When we could have talked about it, but yeah, I just think this movie's sort of going to be one of my favourites now. It's just so wacky and daft, and the soundtrack is fucking amazing. The minute Extreme kicks in, the minute Get the Funk Out kicks in, I'm like, right, I'm completely on board with this movie. It's so like right.
A lot of these movies have like there's lots of jazz in these movies, weirdly enough, but in Full Contact, it's just one guy with a guitar on his own, almost constantly. It is a bizarre soundscape for any movie to have, really. And there's other bits where the jazz actually comes in, but no, that can't stand alone. The guitar guy has to come in too and play his guitar licks alongside the jazz. It's a movie, all right.
It definitely is, and I think that's probably it's got all the sort of elements I look for in a sort of like 90s action movie. It's just got that really bombastic soundtrack. There's lots of Extreme, which is like again all from the He-Man Woman Hater album. Just so daft. And then there's lots of like interpretive dance as well in it as well. Which so it goes from like all out action to interpretive dance to like wild kind of fabulous characters to like weird intense camera point kind of John Woo-esque sort of like action, but then it just goes into like gets it back to like kind of dramatic wailing guitars like Gary Moore or something.
This is certainly probably the most playful of the heroic bloodshed films. It kind of, it's not, I know it's kind of Stephen Chow kind of mocked it with Out of the Dark and things like that, even though he's kind of more going off to like Hollywood's what's the Luc Besson film with John Reno?
Leon,
yes. Leon the Assassin. There you go. It was kind of more aping that, but yeah, this is so playful and so it is just fun.
Yeah,
from beginning to end. It doesn't waste a minute. It's fueled allegedly by cocaine because there's nothing else that would do that. And as you say, the score, and it's kind of off-put because obviously because I'm from that era as well, kind of like the hair metal going into grunge and things like that. So like Extreme was kind of like at the back end of that kind of thing. And when you hear it in this movie, it's kind of like, hang on a minute, what's going on here for a second? Because you're not kind of used to that kind of licensed music. What you're kind of used to is, wait a minute, isn't that the soundtrack to The Good and the Bad and the Ugly that's playing in the background of a straight kung fu movie, or a video rip of a kung fu movie with an Axis International dub. But this, it shouldn't work. You describe this film to somebody, and it shouldn't work. And you watch it, and it is just the best time. And you say, by the time the bullet POV comes in, and I mean, you got Chow Yun-fat on a motorbike with a stand-up Guile hairdo, Guile from Street Fighter 2, and it is just bonkers. And it's kind of you want to show this to everybody, but you don't want to show it to everybody as an example of heroic bloodshed. It's kind of one of those kind of things. If this is the only heroic bloodshed people had experience of, you're being sold a lie, basically, at that point, because it's not like, and it's not even like this for other Ringo Lam films. I mean, you look at a lot of the other films, and here's Full Alert being on one side, and then you've kind of got City on Fire at the other.
Oh, that's a good movie, City on Fire.
City on Fire is great, but there's a lot of those kind of, you can see kind of the extremes he goes to within the same genre. As I say, with City on Fire being gritty.
Wasn't City on Fire, like Quentin Tarantino accused of stealing liberally from City on Fire? I can't remember what for.
Yeah, it's the Mexican standoff in Reservoir Dogs. But weirdly enough, talking about Long Arm of the Law, it's also in there as well. So you could say, well, Ringo Lam actually took it from Long Arm of the Law, who then...
Well, Tarantino likes these movies, which is fine, because they're good.
I'm all for it. It's homage. It's not stealing. It's an homage.
Yes, indeed. Anything left to say about this one?
Is this one getting a blue? Is this?
I'd assume so. This has 88 films written all over it. It's so in their wheelhouse.
Well, it's really love. I literally just before the podcast watched Fanatical Dragon YouTuber, and he's talking with Frank Chen about this, and he's like, "You'll never see this on Blu-ray because it's like." I think it was made by a certain company, was then bought over by a company that then folded, and this went to this investment company, and they're like, "Oh, so you can have the rights, and this is the same place that owns the right to Hard Boiled and The Killer." So yeah, I don't think we'll ever really get to see this one. I'm just gonna shit because it's there. Like the copy I've got is like it's like the sound goes off all the time, and it's totally not synced at all, so it's really bad. But it's like, I think they were saying that it would cost a lot of money, like I'm talking like 7 figures to get it released, and then that's not the beginning the rights to it. So yeah, unless
would not make that back at all. Yeah,
no, I think it's shit, but we're just gonna have to find the DVDs and stuff like that way, and I don't think they're really as bad a quality are in for that. I mean,
the Hong Kong Legends DVD that I've got is a good quality. Yeah, it's decent. It's DVD, but it's far better than it's the best version out there as far as I'm concerned. Yeah. I know there's been a few people out in Hong Kong who've been putting together a lot of these films for Blu-ray. I don't know how legit they are, and that's kind of the worry, isn't it? Because they could technically, because these companies have gone out of business, they could technically release these films. It's whether somebody steps up and goes, actually, I have a piece of paper, and especially with Hong Kong cinema, that there's the waters are so muddy. This is why I liked Vengeance Video's method of doing this. It was kind of like, we've got this old Taiwanese kung fu movie that we're going to release in the West with a dub soundtrack. And the Star Wars, with John Williams Star Wars over the top, but the music from Star Wars, I should say, over the top of this. And it's like, if anybody comes for it, we will put it off the shelves. And that's it. Yeah. And they kind of took that approach to it because who holds the right to it? Nobody knows. And this is it, especially with film preservation in Hong Kong, is next until the 2000s was non-existent because nobody foresaw this. No, I mean, there was no video market in Hong Kong because VHS tapes do not do well in the humidity, so it was all VCD, and the quality in the VCDs is not great. So it's one of those. So it is a shame. It is a shame, but. Hopefully one day, never say never.
I mean, the only hope is we recently had a release of, I can't remember the name of it, it's like one of King Hu's movies, and apparently they got that by a title at the beginning of the movie where he just sort of dropped off his copy of it. King Hu dropped it off to the Hong Kong Preservation Society.
Yep.
And
was this the Swordsman of All Swordsmen?
I think that's his alternative title. But he just dropped it off, and through one person passing it to another person, passing it to another, it eventually became usable as a Blu-ray. So you never say never with these things. They turn up from the most unusual of places quite often. So
I know all sorts of them was suggested quote. The Valiant ones was the recent.
Yes, that's the one. Yeah,
the Valiant ones. Yeah. Oh,
Sometimes an insect will evolve to mimic its predator. A fly can look like a spider. A caterpillar can look like a snake. The Judas evolved to mimic its predator. Us.
Nobody up there knows about this.
Nobody would. Not until it's too late. These things can imitate us, they can infiltrate us, and breed a legion before anyone would even notice.
How could you do this? How could you do this? You take something, you make it like a man. A man who's not a man. Manny! He's a thing.
Manny!
Hey, you tell him, Manny. You tell her because she don't give a goddamn.
Hey.
Your kid's gone.
Shut up.
My legs.
Shut up, will you?
And they're both
Shut
talking
the
about
fuck
insects
up!
with lungs.
Shut
Oh, shit, they're everywhere.
Manny, get to me!
It's the blood! The smell of the blood is driving them crazy!
Oh, shit!
Now we've come to the part of the show where we're going to be picking what comes up in an upcoming episode, and we're on to a genres month. Last month it was a last pick. It was Hong Kong heroic bloodshed. And a pair with that as sort of a 90s month. We're going with 90s creature features, which was a weirdly rich vein for that era. So everything from here we go. Put myself on the spot by trying to think of examples now. Tremors to the Godzilla remake they did in Hollywood. It's just all
Was
sorts.
Was Anaconda 90s?
Yes, absolutely it was.
Deep Blue
You've
Sea.
made Deep Blue Sea with the best sort of jump scare of the 90s. Bold take, maybe.
Jurassic Park. Jurassic Park counts, surely.
Yes.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, it's dinosaurs. Of course it counts.
Yeah. Creatures.
Yeah. It's literally anything, really, isn't it? That was what 90s horror was for a lot of the time, and I don't know why it's got such a bad reputation, 90s horror, because it was just a load of monsters eating people. And why is that? Why is that a bad thing?
Yeah, I mean, you're allowed to have, I think weirdly, maybe it gets like mixed in with action films. So people are a little bit more like, oh, is it an action film or is it horror? Like,
yeah,
Jurassic Park is a horror, but you will have people argue against that, I guess.
Those people are wrong.
It's a very thin line that divides those things. But what's your feelings on that decade, that generation of creature features?
It's what I grew up with, so it's not an issue for me in terms of whether it mixes in. I like that it mixes in with action. I think it's very telling of the time. It feels its place, But that ain't no bad thing.
It almost feels like you can draw a line from those as well to like what's the studio that does all the knockoffs now?
Oh yeah, the Sharknado people, you mean? Or...
Yes, yeah, that's what Asylum.
Yeah.
That's
Asylum. That's it.
Yeah. So like all these like Mega Piranha and Frankenfish versus Mad Panda. I don't know. Like it always feels like there's like a straight line drawn from those kind of quite buoyant, big action films where you're just kind of throwing things around into something that with loads more cheap CGI you can churn, and that's where you kind of lose the charm that a lot of those have.
Absolutely.
I mean, I'm petrified of snakes, so Anaconda is a nightmare for me, but the CGI in that is quite good for when you consider when it was made. I know they use real snakes,
90s.
but you know, whereas if you look at like one of the sci-fi snaky films, they look shit. You know, there's no charm in it at all because it's just like some superimposed JPEG. So yeah.
I've always said when it comes to Jurassic Park, it is the best example of something that's standing the test of time in how it looks.
Yeah,
it's, you know, it's practical effects and it looks outstanding to this day.
They spent a ridiculous amount of money on that movie. They really did.
And it shows, yeah.
Any sort of, if you're going to pick three, all of you, if you're going to pick three movies that typify that 1990s creature feature, just while you're thinking, I mean, obviously, I'll throw my hat in first. Tremors, absolutely one of my favourite movies. Love that thing. Could watch it every day of the week. No, I couldn't. That'd be ridiculous, but I could watch it.
Committed now.
Like The Relic as well. That's one which gets slept on an awful lot. Anaconda. It's fun. It's nice to see where all of those movies got it wrong, because that is sort of very pure, and I think there's some animatronic work in this, in the original at least, but beyond that I couldn't say, because that series went on quite a while.
I was going to say Alligator, but that's 1980. I've just had a check, it's not in the 90s. I thought it was in the 90s. Can we pretend that Alligator's in the 90s?
In the first one, that's Kane Hodder in the alligator outfit.
Really?
Yeah, uncredited.
Wow.
Imagine that, you don't even get a credit.
Gotta start somewhere, I guess.
I think Godzilla's in there.
Yeah.
And controversial opinion, the 1997, I think it is, Godzilla is my favourite Godzilla. I think it's fun. It's got Hank Azaria in it.
Oh my god.
That one with Matthew Broderick?
Yes.
That is a very controversial opinion. But I respect it. Yeah.
Hey, not only Jamiroquai. Oh, we can't say his name now, can we? Jesus. That other one that can't be named now because he's on the flag. Yeah. But it's still a banging. But it's Come With Me is still a banging tune. I can't ignore that.
Would something like Men in Black count? Because I think that's like plenty of creatures.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Is Slither?
Loads of things going on in that. Yeah.
Is Slither 90s?
I'm not sure.
Slither, I think, is
no, I think it's
2000s. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, also,
this is the James Gunn one. You mean aliens with
things?
I can't remember any details of it at all.
Does Jumanji count as a creature feature?
Oh,
yeah.
I think there's a case to be made for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
That little boy is the monkey. Honestly,
and the spiders as well.
He's got a weird face. I can't deal with it, and he does that weird look to the camera as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Odd little boy.
That's like a subgenre or a Letterboxd list all of its own, isn't it? Animals that double take in movies. Isn't there? There's one in a movie which I think should be out by now. Infested. There's one with like a spider frog, and it's like not a tree frog, sorry. And it's that tree frog knows what's going down.
Spider frog is another one of the asylums, I think.
What was it? Was it Frogman that we watched at Soho?
Oh, I didn't see it.
That's good.
Heard about it, yeah.
Really fun.
But yeah, I mean, 90s horror was basically teen slashers where all of the teens were played by 30-somethings or creature features. So there's an awful lot to go off, really. A ton. Yeah. So it should be really fun narrowing that down to 3. So, Larry, what is Hard Boiled?
Hard Boiled is another Chow Yun-fat movie, arguably one of his most famous movies, I would say. But a kind of cop, sort of a hard-boiled cop, kind of tough as nails, kind of cop called Tequila. And it's all about this sort of gun shipment ring that he's trying to foil. But along in the way, there is also a undercover cop that he's not aware of, but they kind of run into each other for various parts of the movie, and they have many a gunfight, many an iconic gunfight, I would say, arguably, and trying to foil the gun shipment. All ends with this massive blowout action scene at the end in the hospital, and blowout's probably the understating the gravity of how bombastic that last scene is. But yeah, it's just basically about a kind of a cop kind of trying to foil a kind of gangster family, two rival gangster families fighting together and trying to kind of stop them before they destroy blow up a building.
Well, Anthony Wong is in it again.
Yes.
As the sort of the big bad, I guess, in this one, which goes to what I was saying earlier, how he can play sort of a very snivelling sort of nobody really, and in this he plays an absolute bona fide psychopath.
Yes.
Snivelling nobody, go and watch Ebola Syndrome.
That's a very different movie.
Yes,
we're not doing a category 3 episode yet. But,
here you go. Just kind of going on a side note, talking about Anthony Wong for a moment. Recently, in the last few years, just before lockdown, there was a story about Anthony Wong because he didn't know his father. Turned out he was an Englishman. And he kind of discovered he's got this second family in England. So he kind of come over and brought some of his films to kind of show this new, because obviously in Chinese culture, family is very, very important. So he goes over there and he takes over the bunch of his films. And if you zoom in on the films, one of them is Ebola Syndrome. And I'm like, you're really not. It's like, hi, long lost cousins, brothers and sisters, whatever. Here, watch one of my movies. And that's the one you put on. Really?
He's proud of it then.
Yeah,
it's a great performance, but Jesus, that's a bit like saying, "Oh, Nan, come round and watch this scary movie with me," and then putting on the sadness. I mean, come on. Hi, I'm going to screw your eyeball now. It's like, what?
Yeah, this is an incredible movie. I mean, I'd go as far as to say between this and Police Story, you've got basically some of the greatest action set pieces that cinema's ever had, really.
Yeah.
I'm not being hyperbolic. It's just that good, honestly.
See, I love describing this as the prequel to the video game Stranglehold.
Yes.
That's an obscure pull there.
No, but weirdly enough, there is a video game comparison to be had with Hard Boiled, because if you notice, kind of each action set piece has kind of got its own boss level. It's kind of got its own kind of lead, and then Anthony Wong is the big boss at the end, kind of thing. And it just fits those beats perfectly. But it's kind of what I alluded to earlier about that kind of slow motion and kind of thing. Whereas in Zack Snyder does it, and his films could be half as long. With regards to that, and I know it's kind of easy to bash Zack Snyder. I still think his Dawn of the Dead was brilliant.
It's the only good thing he's ever done. I'll go as far as saying.
He's good at doing other people's adaptations. Let's put it that way. Just not comic book movies either. When he's left to his own devices, it's kind of like, sucker punch, really? Although I've got a funny story about making my wife watch that one New Year's Eve. But it's with this, it's kind of used the slow motion action beats. It's there as kind of an appreciation of the action instead of, because this is it, especially, and I think a really good comparison for or a really good kind of example of this. You watch something like the Paul Greengrass Bourne films. Where the camera's in close, you're seeing the action, it's very kinetic, but you can't see what's going on. With this, it's very, I mean, let's take the tea house gun shooting at the start. One of the most iconic parts of Hong Kong cinema is Chow Yun-fat going down the banister, guns are blazing, shooting everybody in sight, and it's just going, but it's done in slow motion so you can appreciate the gravitas of what's going on. Yes,
If
he
it
is dodgy,
wasn't,
but
it'd be
can I just
over
say,
like that. Yeah.
exactly. If it was just kind of like in close, you wouldn't have a focus of what's going on. It shows you the layout of the room. It shows you who he's got to get and where. And let's face it, in heroic Bloodshed, nobody's a good shot. Well, until the hero turns up, and nobody ever runs out of bullets either. Until the plot until the plot decides that, oh no, we need to see where the bullet goes. And that's kind of in this as well. But he kind of puts it in this pace, and it's really unique to what John Woo was doing. It's kind of alluded to in Long Arm of the Law, and other people trying to do, but he mastered it. And Hard Boiled is the absolute peak of getting that down. As I say, it just allows you to appreciate and allows the action to tell a story of its own without the need for dialogue, without the need for character bait, because the character's right there. When people start jumping over, and yes, it gets ridiculous and it gets ludicrous, but there's just such a wealth in there that, and no wonder no wonder Hollywood poached him as soon as they could. They gave him some rubbish movies to work on. And yes, I am saying that about Face Off because I'm not a fan.
Well, it's a meme movie, isn't it? It's a meme movie.
Yeah, it's got great action in it. Oh, come on, Mission Impossible 2. Give him something with a bit of meat on his bones, or let him have a certain level of creative control rather than handcuffing him. Say, oh, well, can't you just do what you did in Hard Boiled? No, because that was part of that. And what is actually on the surface quite a bobbing story. And it's just elevated. It is, as a lot of heroic Bloodshed films are. A lot of Hong Kong cinema are. The stories actually underneath. It's like, I'm going to kill you. Why? Because you stood on my wife's toes. Okay, fair enough. And, that could be the reason to have a fight. But here it's kind of the action itself as a character. I don't know. My wife tells me off for not making time. Sorry, yeah, that's all I've got. So, I know. You used to be talking on forever, but yeah.
Yeah, Larry, your feelings on Hard Boiled?
I love it. I think it's amazing. It's one of the kind of first ones I've seen. One of the first Hong Kong movies I kind of came across. It was at a time when anytime I would see like Hong Kong movie on like Channel 4 or Channel 2, or VCT I should say, I was just like, right, just tape that because I don't care what it is. I'm just gonna have to watch it. So that's obviously I found Police Story and Miss a Vampire and Zoo Warriors, and then this. I just think that I'm watching it again last night. It's been quite a while. Maybe we've got a good few years since I've watched it. I just think it's just still blows me away. Still love it. Still think it's fun, and it does verge into silliness. But I mean, it's kind of it was kind of at the time. Well, I've seen it when I was a teenager. I've seen that time when it just seemed so the next level of like action movies for me. No, I was used to the kind of Predator and the Arnie movies and the Stallone movies as well. But then seeing this was just like, right, okay, this shit's on another level. This is like just the first time I've seen somebody with two guns, like dual wielding like Berettas and jumping over like this street and then just like flying around the place with like a guns in it. I was like, right, okay, this is my kind of thing. I need to know more. But yeah, I just think it's amazing. I mean, like again, obviously the killer as well is also awesome, but this one is just killer's a little bit more. I was serious, I suppose, in a way. But
yeah,
that's what I was going to say. Yeah, it's a bit more emotional. So maybe that kind of that's a bit more sad and sort of like reflective, and this one's a bit more like guns, blow things up all the time, just constant. There cannot not be a scene without a gun in it. If you're playing the piccolo, have a gun in your piccolo.
It's like a greatest hits package
Yes.
of John Woo. He was great with things like A Better Tomorrow and The Killer, and was making and a lot of like one of my favorite heroic Bloodshed films is one by Patrick Tam called My Heart Is That Eternal Rose, which really picks up on those emotional beats about real people being in a violent world kind of thing. Whereas in Hard Boiled was kind of like, I'm going to take all those bits that you really like from my other films, because anybody only ever talks about the action, and I'm going to put it in one movie. But what I'm going to do, I'm not just going to give you action, because that would be exhausting to watch. I'm going to give you proper beats in between, and I'm going to let the action breathe in here. So when you've got somebody coming from the ceiling, I'm going to put that in slow motion so it can be, so people can really appreciate it coming through. And in the hospital, yes, I'm going to have this one tracking shot with Tony Leung and Chow Yun-fat going from room to room to room to room, and the beats hitting perfectly. Yes,
I mean,
it does.
you got to respect that sort of one take shot in any action movie of any sort of ridiculous scale, like a Hong Kong one, because if one thing goes wrong, you have to reset everything and do it all again. But the fact that a movie this chaotic can do one take shot, it's the work of like an action genius, honestly.
Yeah, as
absolutely. It's insane. Who would let anybody do that? I mean, everybody kind of when Brian De Palma did, what was it, 8 minutes at the beginning of Snake Eyes? Just, come on. That was just people walking down corridors. And we're like, oh, isn't this amazing? Isn't this
that's
fantastic?
hard enough, yeah.
Yeah, but absolutely.
This is like next level. This is
it as well. That final action scene goes on for 40 plus minutes, 41, 42 minutes. And not once does it feel boring.
Correct, exactly.
And that is nuts to have one action scene. And that is what it is. It's one action scene with one thing after another, after another, after another. And not once do you sit there, look at you, watch going, I've had enough now. I need a break.
It invents itself. It reinvents itself. And I don't think, we've talked about in passing, Larry mentioned that comedy doesn't really work. I think that's its only sort of letdown where it tries to humanise him by being a bit silly. That doesn't really work. But in other ways, I think it humanises him beautifully because this movie is probably best known for the part where he has the baby.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's not the insane badass with a shotgun or 2 pistols. He's a guy who has a baby weighing him so he can put a fire out. It's...
But
not
that's
afraid to laugh at
into
himself.
the action, though. It's funny because it's kind of like that's what babies do. I'm on fire. Oh look, and it's pertinent to what's going on with the character. It's a silly moment born out of necessity, not because it's a place to put in a silly moment. Like for another really good film that would kind of fall into this category is Tiger on the Beat.
Yes,
where he is very. He's got a shotgun on a piece of string that he's firing out so he can shoot people around the corner.
Chainsaw fight in it. Yeah.
And there's a check with Billy Chow, and it's so it never quite reaches that level of silly.
No.
But it's just kind of enough, again, to give the audience that breath that it needs, because you've just had bang, 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 and literally, in this case, bang, 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 bang. And it's kind of like, wow, there's a lot going on here, even though you're giving me the slow motion to appreciate it and things like that. It's a lot. And then breathe, go again. And it's perfect. I mean, probably oh God, people are probably going to hate this because I'm going to show my hand now. Probably one of the best comparisons is a good wrestling match.
Yes.
Is those kind of beats that it has, so you kind of have, so you can appreciate those spots that are coming in over and over again. I've just alienated half the audience listening, but I don't care. Yes, I like watching men in tight pants pretend to pummel each other in the ring.
So do I.
Well, they do pummel each other. It's just predetermined.
It's predetermined. Yes, people get hurt. It is a real thing. Yeah, but it's fake. So are movies.
Yeah. I don't know whether there's much more to say, but is there any sort of final thoughts on Hard Boiled between the two of you, Larry in particular?
No, I think this is just again another classic movie that needs to be seen. If you've not seen Hard Boiled, I don't know what the fuck you're doing with your life. You need to sort that out as soon as possible, because if you're like, oh, I don't want, just watch the dubbed version if you don't like subtitles, or just turn it off and just watch fucking glorious action for like 2 hours. I think
that's one of the things. That is one of the things that John Woo was good at. He's basically making silent movies of his action stuff. It doesn't need dialogue. It's just so clean what the story he's telling in these action scenes. It doesn't need a quippy person sort of undercutting it with sarcastic remarks. You know what's going on because it's told so cleanly and so neatly, really.
Okay, I agree. Yeah, he doesn't really need to. I mean, he does have good dialogue and the script work is really good in this film, but yeah, you could just watch this film with like the sound off and still appreciate it.
And you can really tell, especially with like directors like Johnny To, but particularly John Woo, that they've got a very musical background. One of his dreams has always been to make a musical. And you can tell because it's kind of got that flow. It's kind of got that universal feel to it. He's just replacing the song and dance with bullets and bloodshed, you know? And so it's, yeah. And you probably heard enough from me about this, but it's always funny recommending this one as like a starting point because it doesn't get better than this. You know what I mean? It's not like start on the top and work your way down. It is absolute perfection as far as the genre is concerned. Every single beat, it was like everything in John Woo's career to that point came to fruition. And yeah, he's made great films since, and I'm a big fan of the Red Cliff films and things like that, and he's gone in very different directions, and even some of the stuff he did out in Hollywood was worth watching. But this is the pinnacle of Hong Kong cinema, I would even argue, is that because it showed to the world what was possible, and even Hollywood took notice. And Hollywood doesn't usually take notice, and they went, oh, we kind of pride ourselves on action, and they're doing it a lot better. Let's see if we can get him in.
It happened again about 2 decades later with the Koreans as well. So,
And then with the Indonesians, with like the team that made The Raid, it kind of again it upped the ante again with as far as, I mean, come on, look at sort of like the Night Comes for Us.
Yes.
How nobody died making that movie, I will never know.
That movie was ridiculous. I agree with you're saying, but I've talked about it recently on a podcast. We talked about Roadhouse, I think, at that point, which is a very, very dumb action movie, but I was kind of talking about like how Hollywood sort of like has kind of taken notice of the Asian market now and just become right. This is what they're the ones to copy. It wasn't a case of Asian Hollywood copying Hollywood and kind of big action films like Arnie films, but when this came along, it was just right, okay, that complete game changed. Much of the game changed for me in terms of like, right, okay, I need to go and watch these other movies. I need to find who the Chow Yun-fat character is. I think now kind of, as we say, like Night Comes for Us and The Raid and Iko Uwais kind of these kind of bigger films and like Tony Jaa and like the Hong Bak movies as well. And I think that like now
even
Don Lee,
from the raid, Yayan Ruyan, I'm probably saying his name wrong. He was in that Boy Kills World recently. That got surprisingly hard for American action movie. Yeah,
it's cool. I think that's and like obviously Don Lee as well. Like weirdly showing up in Eternals kind of shows you like, well, they're taking notes of these kind of guys. So and obviously those Roundup movies are fucking, and again like much like the Raid films for me are kind of taken over. They're kind of like, right, now we can notice this guy's like kicking ass over there, so we can hopefully we'll see him in some maybe Hollywood movies. I think maybe other than Eternals, where he's underused in a very, very boring movie, but that's another podcast.
Well, he's the best part of it. And his movies are basically just he's the big Korean guy and he's just going to punch some people.
Very, very hard. Yes.
Not even he's going to slap them. He's basically
yes.
I mean, people don't know because obviously he was in Train to Busan kind of thing, and he was the highlight of Train to Busan. But yeah, no, the way he just comes in and slaps people is just, it's cathartic. He's often described as like the Korean Rock.
Oh yeah,
I kind of think he fits that perfectly.
He's got natural charisma, or not fake charisma, like. You know,
he's not really an actor. He's a movie star.
Yeah.
But as you say, he's got that charisma that movie stars need. I mean, there's a reason why people flood to the cinema to see Tom Cruise, who's not an actor. It's saying John Wayne made over 100 films. I mean, granted, he won 1 Oscar, but he made over 100 films. And there is a reason for that. And he was no actor. You know, so it kind of... Yeah, it's
charisma and magnetism sells. Yeah,
it's brilliant. And but Chow Yun-fat has that. I mean, for as much now, I would argue that actually Chow Yun-fat, especially if you get into like Tragic Hero and films like that, is a very good actor. Not a singer.
Very weird.
He is not a singer, but
and he's not. He was a favourite cameo of his. Just to sort of slight segue is the Seventh Curse, where he just turns up at the end with a rocket launcher to save the day. It's usually nuts of a movie. What's the Seventh Curse? It's nuts.
And this is it. He kind of rose to fame because of TV. He was not. I'm not going to say one of the first big TV stars to kind of make that transition to film, but he was so successful on a TV show called The Bund. which is based on gangsters in Shanghai. His transition into film just seems so natural, and it was perfect for this kind of role, for these kind of high octane action role, because he just oozes cool. I mean, he is iconic. You think of Hong Kong cinema and things like that, and him lighting his cigar with the $100 bill or whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's an iconic image. Him with the 2 pistols is an iconic image. Him holding the baby in one hand and a shotgun in the other is an iconic image. And these are burnt into our mind's eye when it comes to Hong Kong cinema, and they're for a reason. But yet, bringing it back to Hard Boiled, this is the pinnacle of everything it was kind of working up to. Has it been matched since? Oh, I don't know. I could make an argument for SPL is kind of up in the same ballpark, but no, as far as everything just being perfect at the right space at the right time, it's just everything. Can you tell I like it? Can you tell I like this? Am I giving it away?
A little, yeah. So to wrap up, I guess we talked around the genre up and down. I guess the only real way to end this is just to recommend some films that people. We've thrown a lot of titles at people, and if you can't keep up with the notes and the titles that were mentioned in passing, but just a few from both of your movies that you think people should check out.
Well, just
both of you, because I know Ben could basically talk for an hour.
I'll try to cut off Ben before he talks. We just talked about Hard Boiled, so Hard Boiled 2, The Last Blood. Go and check that. I really enjoyed it. Wild Search, really like Set You on Fire.
Yeah, I've always just on City on Fire. I've always wanted to see Prison on Fire, but it's such a hard film to find that one.
Oh, you can get it. There was a Hong Kong Legends DVD that came out as part of the magazine, the Hong Kong Legends magazine out there. So it is out there. You can pick it up because there was a few of those as well. Ringo Lam really kind of went off on those. And Dante Lam kind of later on kind of picked up that kind of mantle with the Beast Stalker films and things like that. But anyway, try not to go too obscure, because I appreciate My Heart is That Eternal Rose is pretty unavailable anywhere, and it's such a shame because Patrick Tam is a great director. Doesn't make many films, but when he does, it's absolutely perfect. Kind of looking at those, obviously A Better Tomorrow is, the Killer, which has already been mentioned. If we're kind of going into later stage, a lot of the Johnny To films in the early 2000s are really good as well, and available in the UK, like The Election 1 and 2, which are absolutely brilliant. 2 very different films as well, even though one's a sequel to the next, and it is one of those cases where Election 2 is actually a sequel to Election, which isn't very, isn't very often with Hong Kong cinema. But also he did a film called Exile, which again has got Wong in it, which is really good. There was another film which kind of plays a lot with the genre, tropes, again by Johnny To, called Sparrow, which plays with those tropes, but it's about pickpockets. So you don't have those guns. So they have at the end of that film, there's a pickpocket off where they kind of go through, but it plays with the tropes of heroic bloodshed, where they're kind of weaving in and out of each other and things like that. So it kind of shows you the adaptability of those ideas from there. There's been kind of like a recent resurgence in China. A lot of the Chinese streaming services are trying to rekindle it a little bit. It hasn't. Yeah, it's kind of difficult to recommend a lot of these films because films like Cruel War, and there was another one I watched recently, Desperate Sniper was another one. They're fine. They're okay. They kind of fall into that hyperkinetic kind of thing. Simon Yam's in a lot of these films as well. It's good to still see him working. But yeah, no, probably another one as well, which kind of... I was going to say SPL, but that's more of a kung fu movie than a heroic bloodshed movie. But again, it's kind of got those beats of a heroic bloodshed movie, but in a kung fu style. It's also known as Killzone. It stars Donnie Yen.
First one, yeah. The second one's pretty good too.
The second one's pretty good, but it's a very different film. But again, it's kind of one of those, even though it's called SPL 2, it's not, or Killzone 2, it's not really connected. But it is, but it isn't, but it is, but it isn't. It's kind of one of those situations. But no, the election films are probably the two I would probably really recommend people sort out, go and find out. And I'll probably think of 500 others as soon as we stop recording. And in fact, I could just start talking, and what the end of this podcast will just be a fade out in my voice.
Well, there was two that I want to mention. The kind of are, but the kind of aren't. Heroic Bloodshed, the kind of on the edges of it. It's righting wrongs and On the Run, which are two exquisite movies.
Really good. Yeah.
Yin Biao, who he wasn't just Jackie Chan's quirky mate. He did some really really dark crime movies too.
Some would say he was the physical talent in that group. Oh, did I say that?
He was the jumpy one, but he was the much better acrobat. And Mash, well, very underrated. But them two movies, both out on 88 films, very hard-going movies.
Yeah, not, as you say, not traditional, not what people would call heroic bloodshed because of the lack of gunplay and things like that. But yeah, good.
It's on the edges.
Great film. Because it's in contemporary Hong Kong, 80s Hong Kong kind of thing, what we kind of learn to do. But yeah, no, great films nonetheless. Absolutely well worth a watch.
I think that would be about it for this week. So coming up on the next episode is going to be another sort of fun spot. It's 1990s creature features, which was basically what every horror movie was that wasn't a slasher. So there's lots to pick from that sort of. I did want to throw in no, it's 80s, but I really wanted to put the 80s Blob in there because people don't talk about that movie enough, and it is gruesome. It's so fun. But yeah, we got 3 other ones that are a bit more beloved, I guess we'll say. So for this week, Larry, where can we find you and the stuff you do online?
You can find my podcast, Your Move Creep, on Twitter and Instagram at Your MC Podcast. You can find me on Twitter at Your Move Larry. Podcasted on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Podbean, anything. Anywhere you can find a podcast, you can find me.
And Ben?
I am Comrade Samurai pretty much everywhere. CYMREIG Samurai, all one word. That's on Twitter, on Letterboxd, on thegeekshow.co.uk, where I'm pretty much become the East Asian film correspondent, along with Rob here. And just say hello, and I'll say hello back. Even though my mum told me not to talk to strangers.
That didn't really go for him, did it?
Not really, because here I am on the internet talking to strangers. But let's face it, they don't get much stranger.
And on that, we'll be back next time with creature features. So thanks for listening.